Good morning. I'm Julian Hurst, and welcome to our interview today with Tony Martin. And on behalf of the Archives Committee of First Baptist Church, I'd like to welcome him to this program, and we will be doing an interview with him about his time in the service, and we'll just talk to him about some things about where he came from and how he ended up getting in the service. And so, first of all, Tony, let me ask you a little bit about where you grew up and what your schooling was while you were growing up.
Well, Jerry and I was the son of an old dirt farmer. I didn't grow up there, but I was born in Athens, and we had a farm there and outside of Athens, and stayed on the farm till I was 9 years old. Came off the farm, and my dad took a job at the Chevrolet plant in Atlanta, and I actually grew up in the Doraville, Chamblee area, went through elementary school there, went to high school there, and for those people that are familiar with Peachtree Industrial Boulevard, I can remember when it was a dirt road, and Chamblee was a very rural area at that time. Went to the high school there all 4 years. I was fortunate to be able to play football and baseball and wrestled there, and left Chamblee in 1959. I was fortunate to get a football scholarship to East Tennessee State University in Johnson City, Tennessee. Went there and in 1959 and stayed there until 1960. I graduated in 63. Actually, I finished everything in 62, but I had to go an extra quarter because they would only let us as football players take a certain number of hours during football season. And of course, I ended up having to go an extra quarter to get a course that I needed to graduate. And I went through the ROTC program there. That was a real blessing because I decided to go into the advanced program. I got commissioned as a second lieutenant, and actually went into service in I guess January of 1963, and then my first duty assignment was in Vicenza, Italy. Went there. My son was born there in Italy. I had 3 different assignments there. I was a security officer for a nuclear weapons or a special weapons installation in Vicenza. Stayed there for, I think it was probably close to 19, 20 months. Had a move to Livorno, which is, I guess, central Italy along the Mediterranean, and I took over a company there and was the provost marshal for the 8th Log Command, which was one of the largest, port areas in Europe at that time. And of course, during my assignment there, I commanded a company for, I guess, 18 months. It was the 212th MP company, and then I went through basic. I guess I should have told you that. I went through basic at Fort Gordon. I went through officer orientation course at Fort Benning. Went through jump school there. And then, of course, during my tour of duty in Italy, I got to actually go on a lot of TDY trips, temporary duty, where I was convoy commander for special weapons, flew into Turkey, Germany, a lot of other areas. And then I got alert orders to come back to the States, to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, to the 101st Airborne Division. I was there to help establish an Army training center during the buildup of the Vietnam crisis. And so I was a commander of, one of the ATC units that was, running the troops right out of basic training there into the build-up into Vietnam. And then, of course, in 1966, the division deployed, and then I deployed with the division, and of course I had a tour of duty where I had 6 months command and 6 months staff there, and actually we provided the security for Benoit, and then of course I had commanded a company there in Saigon, and then was a staff officer. So anyway, I came back, and I guess it was probably 2 months or 3 months, and then of course I actually separated from service at Fort McPherson, which was the 3rd Army headquarters, and then of course since then Fort McPherson has been closed. And so that was about the extent of my military career. And of course, I know the things that you haven't asked the question, but in the handout that you gave me, it was a very rewarding. I learned a great deal having served in the military from the standpoint of discipline. It helped me to, be focused on organization, dealing with people, and I don't know if there's anything else that you want to ask me, but if there is, I will try to answer it.
How long were you in?
42 months.
Okay.
Almost 4 years. And I like to not have gotten out simply because I extended to stay in order to get my family to, my wife and my daughter to be able to travel with me when I went to Italy. And of course, at that time she was pregnant with my son, Tony. And so they let us do that, and I ended up having a little Italian boy born in Italy. And of course, he had dual citizenship up until he was 19 years old. And then we had to go to the American consulate and get his American birth certificate while we were there, so he would be a citizen here when we got back.
Well, it sounds like you had a very educational period in your life while you were in the Army. I guess you feel like it was a great advantage to you later in your working career, having served that time in the Army?
Yeah, initially, of course, being a real gung-ho guy, and, in the military, and I had contemplated a military career, but I think in the 4 years almost that I served, I moved 7 times, and of course it was, tough on family, and I decided to get out, but the values that I learned in the military carried over into my life, as I said earlier, about organization, discipline, just the love of my country. And I think that, I tried to incorporate a lot of that into the lives of the young men that I coached for 40 years. And I guess I mellowed somewhat in the latter stages of my coaching career, but when I got out, I was, as I said, very gung-ho, and probably maybe was a little tougher on kids than I was later on in my career.
Well, tell us about your career after you were released from your military obligations. Where did you go from there?
Well, when I got out, the coach that I had played for my senior year in high school, he dropped dead on the sidelines of a heart attack in a football game. And of course I had gotten back, and I was an assistant coach at Towers High School, a new school in Decatur. And anyway, when I found out about that, I applied for the job. And of course, being young, and at that time Chamblee was a very I guess AAA school that you know, in a suburb that was growing, and I didn't have any idea that I'd get the head coaching job, but I applied for it, and I was fortunate to get it. And so I go back to the high school that I graduated from as the head coach, and had a lot of success there. And after about 12 or 13 years, I decided to go a little further south, and of course I went to a private school down in Warren County and McDuffie County, this side of Augusta, which I was familiar with as a result of having been and you know, serviced down at Fort Gordon. I bought a farm, restored an old house that was 180 years old when I started. I actually sent my son to college at Georgia College in Milledgeville, a couple of years there with some, from, you know, using the funds for some cows that I'd sold. I left there in '84 after the kids left and went to college, and then I went to Dalton. And the guy that I'd played baseball with in college was the personnel director up there, and he wanted me to come over and take over a program up there at Southeast Whitfield High School in Whitfield County. I did in '84 and stayed there until 2000. I retired, and then after I retired from there, from Georgia, which I spent 33 years, I went into coaching up in Virginia. Stayed there for 7 years, and moved back to LaGrange here, where my kids and grandkids were, and I guess 6 years ago, that would be 2006-07, built a house, and I actually started going to Mountville Community Church and stayed there for a couple of years, and then came in and talked to Dr. Baxter and joined this church, and been here now for, I guess, close to going on 3 years. And love the church, love the community, and made a lot of friends here. Active over into Active Life Center, and teach an exercise class over there 1 day a week.
Well, you're staying active. That's
staying
good.
active. Yeah.
Well, that's a good story, and I appreciate you coming today and sharing it with us. I'm happy to hear that you're pleased with being a member of this church, because I know it's a great church because I've been a member of it for over 50 years. Yeah. So it's just a great place. We have a great ministry right here.
Yeah, I just, you know, I feel like here that I'm spiritually fed. People are always very friendly. I, you know, have gotten involved in a couple of things, and you know, if my health permits, I guess when I get some loose ends tied up, I may become more involved.
Well, I hope you will.
Mission trips.
I hope you will.
Okay.
Thank you for your story.
Thank you, Julian, for having me.
Thank you for having us this morning, and I would like to remind everybody that the copies of this video will be available in the church library. There will also be a copy in our archives facility, and of course you'll get a copy, Tony, and there will be one down at the museum on Main downtown. So thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you, Julian.
Congratulations on serving your country, as so many of us have done, and we're glad to have you in LaGrange and glad to have you in this church. God bless you.
God bless you. God bless America.